I guess there's several major points that I make in the chapter. The first is a critique of what I call the forms of formal education, that is, schooling as it is conducted practically everywhere in the world, from the richest to the poorest countries, and the fact that it does not at all reflect what we have learned in the last century about how people actually learn. That was a product of a set of misconceptions of people in rich countries 150 years ago. But once we got it, we don't seem to know how to change it, at least on any large scale. And we end up just stuck with it and devoting huge amounts of resources to get, in the best of cases, some very modest changes, if any at all, which is very frustrating to an awful lot of people. But then, the second big part of the argument is the fact that the work that I and a whole loose network of folk around the world have been doing for about a decade and a half now is uncovering now well over 200 programs that are radically alternative in form, what I call the emerging model, and seem to do spectacularly well, some on very large scale, like the Colombian case, which about 25, 30,000 schools. And the Bangladesh case is about 30,000, 35,000 schools, and so on and so on. And some are still pretty small, still kind of pilot stage. And what's remarkable about them is that they work with what I call the hardest to reach and hardest to teach kids in some of the poorest countries in the world. And they come to school, they stay in school, boys and girls, at least in equal measure. They learn very well indeed, and wherever testing has been done, they tend to outperform kids in the rich school, standard schools, who are generally much richer kids. And we need to learn from them. And I think it's, as teachers, by reflecting on the kind of pedagogy that they use and the way teachers are taught how to teach in these schools, there are some lessons we can learn, nothing that somebody's going to be able to take automatically back to a classroom. There might be some, I could try that. But some of the ideas are actually already infiltrating some schools around here. Like multi-grading is one of the very common features of these programs, and Quebec has now gone as a province to a form of multi-grading in the primary school. So, it's not as odd as some of the things might seem, even though in any given school a teacher might have considerable difficulty. But at least it provides a point for reflection and looking for alternative ways to do things. Just the simple fact that large-scale change amongst really poor kids and not very well-educated teachers can occur in places with very little resources, and does kind of raise the question, well, why in the heck can't we do that? And that in itself is a lesson. Again, no immediate policy thing coming from it, except to say, well, we need to think about that, because most people had come to the conclusion kind of that there was not much point in thinking about serious educational alternatives, because what was the point? Nobody could make it work, except in some weird experimental schools someplace or other, and they are what they are, but not on any massive scale. And most people can't go to Summerhill in Britain or someplace like that. But these are very big systems and growing all the time. And they also, one thing that I find particularly interesting about them compared to the way we do things is the way they organize their teacher education. The preparation and before service is quite brief, very intense, very focused on classroom visitations and practice teaching. But then they back-end load through the first years of a teacher's practice. So, as I often say, and generally speaking, with the various forms of assistance and teacher-to-teacher mentoring and supervisory assistance and all sorts of things like that, that these teachers are almost never alone. There's always somebody near, and somebody they can talk to, and they do, when given the chance. And that's just remarkably different from the way we've opted to do it, where we front-end load everything It's harder than heck. I was just talking to some teachers in the class this morning. Was saying just how isolating they find practice teaching. There's no space to talk to other people. You work with the kids and then you go. I think they're onto something very important in these programs. Something we actually know for a long time, that the most important part of a teacher's learning occurs in the first 5 years of their actual practice. But we don't do anything about it.